Alright, this video is on why so many people just plain don't like Christians. Trying the plain and simple of it is judgment. So many Christians feel that it's their place to judge, but they don't want to be judged. They feel it is okay for them to persecute others, and then they whine about being persecuted. They will literally persecute people in their very own town and then complain that Christians are being persecuted elsewhere. Uh-uh. Cut that off right now. Whose place is it to pass that judgment? Is it yours? You don't want to be judged that way, do you? You don't. You think it's okay to persecute Muslims. And then a lot of Christians, when you say, look at all of the stuff that Christians have done, and they say, oh, well, those aren't real Christians. So you're saying that 2,000 years of history, none of those people were real Christians, but somehow magically you are. Now, when it comes to unbelievers, the Bible has a lot to say about them. Jesus would have eaten dinner with a Muslim. I guarantee you that. Jesus would have sat down with someone who's Buddhist and eaten dinner with them. Jesus would eat dinner with an atheist. Now, there's the perjury of ignorance. This is one of the biggest things that I get a kick out of. People telling me what's in the Quran. I've read the Quran. I know it's in there. You know Jesus is actually in the Quran? Did you know that Mary, who does not have her own book in the Bible, has her very own book in the Quran? There are no women in the Bible with their own book. None. But here is Mary, the mother of Jesus himself, has her own book in the Quran. And Christians want to tell me how terrible the Quran is because the Quran says this and the Quran says that. And I ask them, have you read the Quran? Well, no, and I'm never gonna. See? You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You heard something, didn't you? After Natalie died, I'm going to give you the example of two women from Nova Scotia. After Natalie died, a woman from Nova Scotia wanted to send me stuff about cutting my throat and cutting off my balls and things of that nature and calling me a Satan worshiper and so on and so forth and Christian this and Christian that while she's threatening harm against me. I responded to her. I told her I forgive her. Isn't that what Jesus would have done? Oh, she went off about that. And mind you, I got that in my Facebook Messenger, so we can go visit upon that at some point when it becomes more important than the other stuff I got to post, which means I got to post the other stuff that's more relevant and more important before I eventually get to it. Although I might stumble across it because it was important enough that I did take screenshots. So, this woman in Nova Scotia is calling me a Satan worshiper, telling me that she wants to cut my throat and cut off my balls and all this, that, and the other. When I responded to her, her friend got a hold of me and started threatening me and being an asshole and saying that I was harassing her friend. Nope. I was responding to her friend and her friend's threats, and I responded kindly, as I felt was the right thing to do, because this woman was calling me a devil worshiper and being extremely hateful, pretending like she's a Christian, pretending like I'm a Satan worshiper, pretending it's okay to pass judgment upon me. But I forgave her because at the time, well, lots of people thought that I had killed Natalie. And I didn't see that post until well afterwards. And I responded, after they had found Joseph Lopez and after I'd gotten to actually sit down, because a lot of people offered to help me and a lot of people threatened to kill me. Um, I didn't see all of those posts. I saw a few of them right after Natalie died, enough to realize that anybody that I don't know, I don't want to take a look at those, especially at that point in time. And I made mention of that. There's a video on YouTube where I'm walking out of the jail after being assaulted by the border police, and I'm talking about how I hate Facebook. I really do. I'd rather see my friends in person. I'd rather not have to deal with all of the threats and harassment. And when her friend got back a hold of me and she started threatening to call the cops. And of course, being threatening just as her friend had, saying that I was harassing her friendship. I stopped messaging her friend, but when this woman started messaging me, I did the same thing. I responded to her as well. Both of these women from Nova Scotia, this is a lot of Americans are real ignorant when it comes to geography. Most Americans can't remember all of the states. There are states of the Union that if you say, I'm from this state, they'll look at you like, that's a state? Most Americans don't know that Guam is an American holding or that Puerto Rico is an American holding. Nova Scotia is in Canada. So when I had people threatening me from all over the world, I do mean it. And I understand that Canada isn't exactly all over the world. It's on the same continent as North America, for those of you ignorant Americans, because there's a lot of us out there. And I say us because there's lots that I don't know about geography. There are people who are threatening my life, threatening to kill me in foreign languages that I didn't know. And when I did the copy and paste thing and put it up on the Google thing, the Google Translate, it's telling me it's a language that I've never heard of. And I looked that language up to see where it's from, and it's from a country I've never heard of. Now, it's not just people like that. It's the fact that no matter what, you have some prepared excuse. Most of them aren't in the Bible. They're not. I have Christians, my friend Jeff, even, he sent me this thing, this letter that's from God. Now, if you know anything about the Bible, you know that somebody posing as God and writing down a message as if they were God is blasphemy. So my friend Jeff, who is a Christian, is sending me blasphemy. And Jeff is a good man, by the way. I do want to say that. He is a very well educated man. He was a very well read man. But sending me blasphemy, I read the Bible, dudes. I read it. Yeah, that ain't gonna fly. Some schizo thinking that he's God and writing this note. He's not God. My mom believes that she speaks in tongues, or at least that she did when she was younger. And there are lots of Christians who believe that somebody who believes they're speaking in tongues is demon possessed. So you guys can't even agree on that. But meanwhile, you guys want to judge without taking a look at both sides and just assume. Now, in this situation, Natalie's family played heavily on the Jesus thing, but they're not the only ones. See, they played on Jesus to get your sympathy. They must be good, honest, and righteous people because they said in the name of Jesus. They did a bunch of fucked up things, not just to other people, but to each other. These people did terrible things to their own family because they were fucked up on drugs, but in Jesus' name or whatever, right? Christians have persecuted more Christians than all other religions combined. Did you know that? Christians have murdered more Christians than all other religions combined. Christians have killed more Christians than Muslims. Christians have killed more Christians than Buddhists. Christians have killed more Christians. I want that to go into perspective before we even get into all of the people that they've killed. Now, if we pretend that the Crusades didn't happen and that they didn't massacre literally every man, woman, child, and dog in Jerusalem, if we pretend that that didn't happen, we still have to deal with the fact that Christians, as a community, want to be ignorant, which is why they're not ignorant, they're stupid. Are all Christians stupid? No. I know some very tolerant Christians, but I also know a lot more Christians who want to twist and manipulate things that aren't even in the Bible to make the things that they're doing okay. Well, you can't judge me, only Jesus can do that. But then when it's the other way around, it's fine for you to do so, isn't it? And sometimes you'll pull from the scripture, won't you? And sometimes you'll just start spouting off that ignorance, won't you? But in either case, you don't like it happening to you, do you? How would this woman from Nova Scotia like it if I got a hold of her and threatened to cut her throat? Or threatened to cut out her vagina with a knife? Do you think she'd like that? No. When she does it to me, I'm supposed to just get over it. But if I was to threaten her in such a fashion, oh my God, you guys would blow a fucking gasket, wouldn't you? Of course you would. Some dude with a beard, unattractive, broke and homeless, who you assume is a drug addict, threatening to cut out somebody's vagina? Fuck yes, you guys would fucking flip your shit. Meanwhile, she's playing victim. I didn't know who this woman was. All I knew is that was when I was going through that so that I could say thank you to the people who had offered to help, that I had been cut off from being able to do that and say thank you to because of everything that had gone on. And I saw the fucking terrible things that people were sending me. A lot of them, when they said that they were Christians or they typed this shit about me being a Satan worshiper or anything like that, I typed, I forgive you. That is the right thing to do. But if they want to continue with the cruelty after that, yeah, I'm not taking my forgiveness back. You're committing more crimes, and this time I'm not going to forgive you. You're going to have to ask for it. You think that God's going to accept you up there, right? You're not even willing to swallow your pride on this planet to admit that you're wrong. And you guys have this idea in your head that you can do cruel shit to other people, but it's not all right for them to do that shit back. You get it in your head that it's all right for you to go pushing somebody's buttons like that and poking them with a stick and being accusational and hateful and evil What that woman from Nova Scotia did was outright evil. And she thinks that she's going to go to heaven because she believes in this Jesus. Well, if she believed in this Jesus, she never would have threatened my life to begin with. And then she wants to play like I'm harassing her. No, lady, you got a hold of me first. And then we get to hear all of this, the story about the boat, right? How the dude's drowning and three boats go by and he says, God's going to save me. God's going to save me. God's going to save me. And then he fucking drowns, right? Gets to the pearly gates. St. Peter says to him, St. Peter's the one at the gates, right? Is he? So we got St. Peter at the gates. And he says, well, God sent you three boats. Why didn't you get in? Did God really send you three boats? Or was that three good, loving people who used their free will to try to rescue you? What if one of those people on a boat was a Muslim? Are you not going to accept it because you think that Muslims are all hateful people that just want to kill you? What if one of those people on the boat is an atheist? Did God send them or was it free will? Because, train, the concept of free will and God's will, they clash with one another. Is it your decision or is it God's decision? If it's God's decision, it's always God's decision. If it's God who sent that person to come rescue you, then it was God who sent that person to rape you. If it was their free will to rape you, then it was their free will to rescue you. But when it doesn't fit what you're trying to say, and somebody with an analytical mind is trying to explain that to you, you'll bounce back and forth across the line, whatever fits, whatever you feel best, whatever fits your bias best, whatever makes it okay for you but not okay for them. That's why people hate you guys so much. There are a lot of people who hate Christians. That woman from Nova Scotia is a perfect example of why. Her friend is a perfect example of why. Alicia Bollinger is a perfect example of why. Graham is a perfect example of why. Ted Bollinger is a perfect example of why. And Brenda Dickinson is a perfect example of why. Alex Furman is a perfect example of why. Russell Huggins is a perfect example of why. When the difference between hell on earth and living in paradise is whether or not you stop making those excuses when it happens to somebody else. Yeah, your God don't mean spit in a pot. It don't. When it happens to you, you want justice. Russell Huggins, when what happened to me was going on, he was telling me, oh, Sean, you just need to let it go. You need to just stop posting about stuff. You need to this, you need to that. And then the border police, same people who are doing fucked up shit to me, they did fucked up shit to him. And he has been going off about Democrats ever since. He blames it all on Democrats. It is all Democrats' fault that those police got away with what they did. It's all Democrats' fault that they did what they did to him. Meanwhile, this dude owns two motorcycles and also a fucking shiny white Corvette. He lives in a house and he's buying another one. He and I not the same. We not the same. We not the same. Here's the church. Here's the steeple. Open the doors and see all the people, not just the Christians. This is God's house, ain't it? This whole world is supposed to be God's house, right? Let me tell you something. If God made you, He also made homosexuals. He also made black people. He also made Mexicans. He also made Canadians. If God made you, He also made Muslims. He also made Buddhists. He also made atheists. Jesus talks a lot about acceptance. You guys want to hate sinners. Meanwhile, you sin every day. When one of your fellow brothers commits a terrible atrocity, you say, oh, well, he's just not a real Christian. But you say that all Muslims are that way. You've never read their book. Most of you haven't even read your own book. Most Christians have never read the Bible. I want you to put that in perspective. And even worse, most Christians before the turn of the last century couldn't. Vincent van Gogh lived in a time where he was trying to become a priest. Do you know why he quit trying to become a priest? He was protesting because the common person can't read Latin, and everything was done in Latin at the time. Vincent van Gogh, the famous artist, people had to have interpreters of what it actually said and what it actually meant. Now, my friend Jeff, that I was talking about earlier, we were talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls about 2 months ago. And I was telling him that it wasn't just one place that the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, they were found all over the place. It wasn't just like they found one little hole and that was it, and it was filled with all of the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found. No, they were all over the place. They're called the Dead Sea Scrolls because they were found around the Dead Sea. But the Dead Sea isn't the only place that the manuscripts were found either. Those manuscripts were found all over the place. All over the ancient world, those manuscripts were found. And by the ancient world, I mean Egypt, Africa, the places where before white settlers came over to America, they were spreading the word. Obviously, they weren't spreading the word in the United States of America because it was Native American at the time. There was no Europeans here to bring them the word of Jesus. Not until the 1400s. So by that time, Jesus had already been dead for well over 1,000 years. Almost 1,500 years. That doesn't mean 1,000 years plus half of a year. 1,500 years is a long time. 1492, that's quite a ways. Now, a lot of these other scrolls weren't found around the Dead Sea. They weren't. They were found, some of the ones that were found in Spain or Italy, places like that. They still call them Dead Sea Scrolls, but they're not actually the Dead Sea Scrolls. They still call them that, but they're not. However, when I was talking to Jeff about the Dead Sea Scrolls and saying that it wasn't just one set of scrolls, it wasn't found in just one place, he wanted to tell me the story of how the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And I knew that story as well. But the story of how they were found wasn't nearly as important to me as what they contained. Now, Jeff was pretty adamant about the fact that all of the Dead Sea Scrolls all came from that one place. And he eventually, sorry, I got some phlegm in my throat. He eventually got back to me. He said, "You're right. They were found all over the place. There were more than one location around the Dead Sea that they found them." Like, I know. With Michael Ignatius, we had a similar conversation. I believe he is Lutheran, and he had an interpretation of what it said in the Bible. And I broke it down for him. I was like, dude, I read the Bible when I was 6. I didn't have somebody interpret for me what it said. I didn't have some preacher up there at 6 years old telling me what the Bible was telling me. No, I was actually reading the book at 6 years old. I read the whole thing when I was 6. I wrote my name on the side of my mom's Bible. She slapped the hell out of me for writing my name on the side of the Bible. That's blasphemy. But Jeff, he's a scholarly fellow. And when he realized that it wasn't just one date that they were found in one location with that shepherd boy, that's the thing, is that there are probably still scrolls around the Dead Sea that have not been found yet. They've been finding them ever since they were first located. There have been many, many caches of those things just around the Dead Sea that we can still call Dead Sea Scrolls. And they would literally be Dead Sea Scrolls because that's the location they were found in. Even if you take out the stuff that was found in Spain or North Africa, Jeff, he actually looked it up. He didn't just assume that he was right and stick with that and be a complete dick about it. He looked it up. He admitted that he was wrong. Do I think Jeff is going to go to heaven when he dies? Well, I don't believe in heaven or hell. I believe in the possibility. But I also believe if there is a heaven, yes, he is probably going. There's lots of stuff that he has done in his life that I am sure is illegal. I'm sure of it. But you know what? Illegal ain't the same thing as immoral. As far as morality goes, Jeff is a good man. Now, then there's people like Michael Ignatius and Brenda Dickinson who want to use Jesus as their excuse not to come forward, not to tell the truth. People like Alex Furman and Russell Huggins. And I love both of these men, I really do. But they want to twist the words in order to fit their complacency. So I sent them both a copy of Martin Niemöller's poem. Now, this man was a Lutheran pastor during World War II, Nazi occupied Germany. This guy was a pastor, a man of God. And what is his poem about? About just watching, about just watching it happen. For the rest of his life, he spoke out. He felt like shit because he just let it happen. When they came for the communists, that's how it starts. When they came for the communists, I want you guys to look up the name Martin Niemöller. Martin Niemöller. Or Niemoller. There's two different spellings that I've seen, and if you type it incorrectly, it'll still bring up his name, which is the great thing about it. With Russell Huggins, he wanted to make excuses when it happened to me. Excuses not to come forward, to not tell the truth. But then he also wanted to judge me for speaking out about it. Wanted to tell me how to think and how to feel. Then when it happened to him, and it wasn't even 1/1000th of what I went through, he couldn't shut up about it, couldn't stop himself. Had to blame it all on the Democrats. Everything's the Democrats' fault. Every bit of it, it's all the Democrats' fault. In Jesus' name, it's the Democrats' fault. And still, even after that, he wanted to continue giving me the advice that he wasn't following himself. Wanted to continue to tell me to do things that he wasn't doing. I love Russell Huggins, I really do. I love Alex Furman, I really do. But at the same time, the things that they were doing to me, when I did them back, they didn't like it. After Natalie died, not Martin, but Russell was getting on and telling me how to think and how to feel, trying to give me a life's lesson. Some of the stuff that he typed was quite rude and inconsiderate, and some of it was just outright mean. When he was going off on Democrats, and I typed stuff like that back to him, oh, he didn't like it. Oh, he didn't like it. But at the same time, he got to feel what it is that I felt every time he did that to me. Kind of like with Miss Jerry on her son's post when he was talking about how a soldier should punch Colin Kaepernick in the throat. Colin Kaepernick, I can give a fuck less about football. Colin Kaepernick is one of my personal heroes because he was fighting for human rights. He took a lot of hell for that too. Still takes a lot of hell for it. The guy who was fighting dogs to the death gets to play football and be your children's idol. But a man who stood up for human rights, you don't want him playing football because he wouldn't stand up for a fucking flag. That flag was supposed to stand for something. And that something it was supposed to stand for, y'all allowed to get flushed down the toilet like it's paper for your butthole. It's called the Constitution of the United States of America. But not just the Constitution and its amendments. It's the fact that throughout American history, black people have not been allowed those rights. Homeless people aren't allowed those rights. Immigrants aren't allowed those rights. They're supposed to, especially today. But you still make excuses why it's okay because it's not happening to you, Mr. White Guy. Mr. White Christian, it's not happening to you, so it's okay. It's okay to happen to black people, isn't it? It's okay to happen to Muslims, isn't it? It's okay to happen to communists or socialists. It's okay, isn't it? Meanwhile, during this whole COVID-19 thing, you guys want your stimulus package. You want your socialism. You want your communism. It's magically okay now. But still, the people who need it most aren't going to get it. The people who are most at risk, the homeless, aren't going to get their stimulus package, are they? No, they're not. They're still not human to you. And sure, you want to say, oh, well, I volunteer at my church on Thanksgiving to feed the homeless. So you got no clue what you're talking about. Really? One day of the year. Hmm. One day of the year you feed the homeless. But you ain't teaching them to fish, are you? It's when you're expecting someone who's never fished in their life to automatically know how to fish just because you told them to. Or when they don't have a pole or a body of water to fish in. They could be the best fishermen on the planet. But without a pole and a body of water to fish in, they're not going to catch any fish. But you're not going to think about that, are you? You're going to say God wills it, which is one of the nastiest fucking excuses in the history of mankind.